I'm
just, that's me that
I'm on Moana right now. You think of them just again leaving
like this
is like I'm naturally doing this.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the Three Fates podcast. I'm Deanne.
I'm Pam.
And I'm Meredith.
Welcome in. If you're just joining us, what is this now? Like 7 episodes in?
Episode 5.
No, 5.
Episode 5, yeah. I was like 7, 8, 9, 10. Where are we?
Classic overachiever.
Yeah. What is, I know, the type A personality. Let's just talk a little bit again about the Three Fates, the archetypes of birth, life, death. Again, we're not deeming this as putting in roles that we do for all of society, but we're just holding an archetype of a cycle period of birth and life and death. Is that a fair way to say it, ladies?
Absolutely.
Totally.
I love that. Yeah.
And true to our fashion, we are going to just kind of get into a meditative state first off and just see what our agenda is today, because usually when we show up, we have no idea what we're going to work in.
Just be in the flow, feel the magic.
We sometimes have quick talks like, how are you doing? What's going on? And that can stir an agenda. And sometimes something else might come up depending on our guide, spirit, maybe the collective energy. So I'm just here to see what comes up today. What the priority is, as us body talkers would say.
Priority versus agenda,
Yeah.
right? You can have agenda of the things we want to talk about, but what is the priority?
Okay. I like it.
I'm really feeling a few things, but I want to hear from Meredith first, because I'm just feeling octopus so greatly still, just really shining up here, which I'm not sure what that's going to mean. But,
and that's the octopus. The Kraken is a personal spirit guide of mine, and I've been discovering him more in a healthy light, and a lot of deep processing for me under the water. So that's probably maybe what she's picking up on today, as I've been doing a bit more sinking in that work of Kraken and myself. So that could be an agenda. I'm open to it, but
well, you're very much present in that energy. So either you're going to be representing that a little bit today.
Do you see like 8 arms?
I just see you as an octopus, absolutely. Like we were saying that before, and it's really, really clear right now.
Yeah. Oh.
So there's something, and there's lots of energy with octopus energy we talk about in BodyTalk too. So we'll see how I feel like there might be a little bit of matrix work perhaps.
Cool. Meredith, do you want to lead us in some breath, like just to ground us?
And then we can tune in.
And then we
a
can
little
tune
deeper.
in. How do you feel about that?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
I feel kind of funny today. I was just telling the girls I just got off of a night shift, so I've had about an hour of sleep, an hour and a half of sleep, and when I was starting to like learn how to work with spiritual gifts and things of that nature, anytime I worked on a night shift or I was particularly delirious, that's when I would say they would get me. Meaning like the spirit guides are like, her defenses are down.
The veil is thin.
Yeah. Make her know this.
Her way she is tired.
Yeah.
I put up a lot of resistance to a lot of things. So I'm kind of curious what it is today, because I haven't worked a night shift in quite some time. And I'm already feeling the like, do with me what you will. Kind of, which always makes me a
Take me
bit,
as I am.
Okay.
I'm the
Hi.
conduit. What do you want me to do with that? So, yeah, it's kind of funny. Like, there's still consent there, but I'm definitely feel
Is
like,
there though?
yeah. I mean, sometimes it's nice to just let someone else take charge, you know?
Have your way with me, please.
Please.
Anyway, on that note, so welcome to Delirium. It can be fun. But with that invitation, just tuning into our breath, our life force. If you're listening, you're absolutely welcome to join in. And as we do that, we just bring our awareness to the breath, to this actual rhythm of birth, life, and death. Each inhale, that invitation, birthing into more nourishment, feeling it pass through your lungs and oxygenate, and then exhale this beautiful little death. Just that really, really special cycle that defines a lot of our lived experience as a human. So in through the nose and out through the mouth. We'll do 3 breaths to open. Just allowing ourselves to tune into the highest priority for our time together as we are agreeing to work as these archetypes. Beautiful. There we go. We are open.
How you ladies feeling?
Good.
This is where we all look at each other in the eyes and see what's happening.
Well,
See,
then it's like, okay, so we can all obviously have different things that land for us. So I think that we were talking about in coffee the other day, Deanne and I, about like parallel things happening at once to like as the priority. Sometimes I could be seeing something on matrices that's really clear for me right now. I'm like really feeling matrices and kind of hooks and cords and projections and invasive energies and maybe entities, that kind of a theme of kind of a conversation. And somebody else could have downloaded something a little different, and that both could be true and a priority. So anybody else have anything that came up for them?
I'm very much just a tool right now.
She's in delirium. What about you?
I felt it's like as soon as you started to open the conversation around matrices and the webbing I'm hearing really strong, the webbing. Now I just can't get it out of my mind.
Right?
So I think Pam's like really leading this matrix conversation today, which I love because it's matrix sounds like something in like the future, right? Like you think of the actual Matrix, like the movie. I think when we say this, people are like, what does that even really mean, right? And maybe to everybody it could be something a little bit different, perhaps. But Pam, do you want to start by just talking maybe about like this definition or the definitions, I feel like, or the teacher aspect of matrices?
Yes, I'll go in teacher mode.
She's our beautiful little teacher over here. I love it.
In human design, my life's work line, if you know human design, is a line 6, which actually defines as the teacher. So I'm going to just vibe that out right now. Okay, so matrix work.
Look at her.
I know. I was like, you are glowing.
I need a blackboard, whiteboard situation. Okay. So this is BodyTalk terminology. Well, I'm not sure where BodyTalk got the terminology, but I got it from BodyTalk. I don't know where it originated from before that.
BodyTalk is just a system.
A system of many modalities.
Yeah.
So BodyTalk might have received this terminology from somewhere else. I'm just not aware of that. So props to wherever it started from. I got you. Calling out. So how we see matrices is like interwebbed connections through society, through groups of people, so that's a group matrix. So basically you can see it as like a matrix as Canadians is like Canadians create a group of an interconnected web together. You almost can see like certain traits. They'll say stereotypical things like Canadians are really nice, or we say sorry, or we say a. It's kind of like those things that are in the traits are living in that collective web, and we're all kind of hooked into it, and so we're all receiving this kind of collective shared energy. You see that same kind of group matrix in, say, friendships or colleagues. Here, this is a matrix. Yeah. And you also family. So that's a family matrix is like your immediate family, your nuclear family. Yeah, immediate and nuclear. And then, so that's a matrix. You can also have energetic matrices, which are like just you and an energy of a consciousness, not so much a person. So that is like somebody throwing, we can call them hooks and cords too. So somebody like has a thought about you, whatever the thought is, high vibe, low vibe, doesn't really matter. And they kind of like send it your way. So now if I'm like thinking about Deanne and I'm like, oh man, she's like so octopus today. And I'm like thinking that I'm kind of sending I'm not kind of holding it in my own space, but I'm kind of projecting it on her. Like, oh, don't you feel like you're an octopus? Like, aren't you one? Like, don't you feel that way?
And I'm like, am I? What is my, and then when I went in and like opened myself up with breath, I was like, oh, I see the meaning of the octopus.
Right. And so then that is my projected idea or consciousness that I'm like, kind of directing your way, and that could like hook into her system, and that we call that a cord or a cord or hook. And then so what happens then? So my idea or my consciousness travels through that line, and it's invasive to Dee's system. So now it's a projected matrix for me, but an invasive matrix in Deanne. So that's the vocabulary we use. So if that shows up in a session for BodyTalk, and if that's causing a disturbance in somebody's system, we'll highlight it. Oh, are you projecting a matrix onto someone that's even creating a disharmony in your system, or are you holding an invasive matrix in your system from someone else's thoughts coming into your body? And then we have my favorite. Entity matrices.
An entity, let's clarify that word, because sometimes I can say entity is just meaning like an external force. Like, and it doesn't have to be bad. And it could just be an external energy that's coming in. So sometimes I'll even use that as entity. I think in one of our podcasts, I was like, is the entity, and Meredith, you were like in your channel, you're like, define entity, please. Define entity. I'm like, not bad. It's not bad. And you're like,
it's basically like a projected matrix.
Define it, please.
Define it.
Clarify.
Yeah. I was like, oh boy. But yeah, that's...
projected matrix, invasive matrix. Oh yeah, one more. Normal matrix means a matrix within yourself. Like you're projecting energy and you're kind of looping it back into you, which is also very interesting. So all those are with created by living people. Like human to human, all of those, like the group matrices, the projected, the invasive, the normal. That's how we define it. Anything that's entity matrix is basically somebody that's not in a physical form.
Oh, okay.
It could be super high vibe. It could be middle vibe, low vibe. It doesn't really matter. It's just non-mattered energy coming at you.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that is always really fascinating to me because I find them in people all the time. Yeah. And typically the ones I work with, because if they're going to be invasive in your system on a low vibe way, so it's usually the more lower vibe entities that I typically work with because they're obviously not very healthy for your system. So I've been really thinking about entities and projected invasive matrices and why do people have them like hooked in and feeling into the energy of like what creates a hook and a cord in your system? Is it like a part of your body that's actually just really deeply wounded and has like an openness to it, and it's actually this hook and cord is going there because that's just a chink in the armor, a spot for it to come in where there is no boundary. And then you can either see it as like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this low vibe entities in my system. But then also on like the flip side, you're like, oh, thank you, because you showed me that my chink in the armor, I can see where this thing entered in. And that could be a place of like highlighting, oh man, I need to do some work around the consciousness of this body part, wherever it's hooked into, because if it's a healthy or like well-boundaried location in your body, then I would consider like probably not as easy for hooks and cords to get into those places.
Do you guys think you've ever had like a really, really low vibe entity in your body or in your vessel in some time of your life?
Lots.
Do you think it's okay? That's like a first part question. My second part question is, do you think everybody does? Like, do you think most people will or have?
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, what's your guys' thoughts?
Again, I think like how healthy you are in your boundaries are depending on your wounding or maybe what your karma is or like that kind of thing. But I mean, I see it often, but I also attract that in my practice because I know how to handle them. So not sure. What do you think?
I also always struggle with like the languaging around like high vibe, low vibe frequencies, not from like a judgmental thing, but from a judgmental place, I guess, of being like, I think I hear a lot of languaging around shame-based stuff tied into it. Do you know what I mean? Like, how could you be so low vibe, or like where you're not high vibe enough? So I definitely just want to acknowledge that we're not talking about that when we speak to that, just so in case anybody's like activated by that languaging, because that's not how you're speaking. And I know that's not what you're talking about. So I just want to really clarify, we're not saying... No,
it's just like
high vibe versus low vibe. Yeah. There's literal frequencies, like color has frequencies. It would be like saying how I see it. And for me, how I interpret it is like, you wouldn't say something like, purple is of more value than green, or like, you
Right.
know, like
It's just a
like,
vibration
it's just a
of it.
vibration,
Yeah.
and like they're all of value, right? They all coexist. And this is where I get my rep for being like down with the dark kind of stuff, you know, but I do appreciate like the light exists because of the dark. And so understanding that when you're working with different frequencies and different energies, like this, like you're talking about, is just how I'm interpreting it, is really interesting and important, I think, to distinguish, so that you can actually look at it objectively, rather than going into like, oh, this happened.
sure.
How did they get me? Like
That's
that
annoying.
kind of thing. You know, I hate that kind of stuff. It's like, well,
And
that kind of blamed culture. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I was like, that's not the point. It has how I see it. It's
Yeah.
just working with different frequencies and energies and this sort of thing. So
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, even if it's like, if you think about root chakra, crown chakra, I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm not going to root because it's so
So low
It's so
vibe.
low vibe, my root chakra compared to my crown.
that one. And then actually, I kind of do a lot. I'm like, oh, I gotta go down there. As I said that, I was like, well, I kind of like do. I guess do that.
Well, I think that's a big thing about when we work with entity work or projection work. We think it's low vibe. So like, I
Yeah.
think this is why I want to have this conversation today is to bring the judgment and the fear out of this conversation, because a lot of fear of this type of energy or projected energy, or like, oh my God, is something in my body, is actually what weakens the system, what actually draws the boundaries in and makes you a little bit more susceptible.
And we attract more of the likeness, right?
Yeah,
So It's
exactly.
harder to get out of than, quote unquote, that courting to that, you know, vibration, or then you can't also get out of the trauma of
Yeah.
why it's attached in.
yeah. And
That's
the fear-based stuff, right? You start operating from a place of fear, and fear in itself has its own spectrum, right? There's healthy fear. There's like, you know, fear that renders you incapable, all those sorts of paralyzing fear. There we go. That's the word. You're going to have to be
Paralyzing fear.
patient with me today
That's
with my finding of the words. But when you start to look at it objectively and as all of value, then you start to unfold like your unique story. And then you can really work with these things that I think you're talking about, like whether it's karmic, whether it's this story, whether it's part of your lineage, whether it's part of your family's system. It is a lot more empowering when you can look at it from a more neutral lens. I think even though the experience is not neutral for you because it is your experience, it allows you to engage in it in a way that is more accepting, more open, and ultimately more empowering. Rather than, again, when we get into the judgment or shame or guilt around it, I just feel like we're bringing in old constructs. And I don't know, is like guilt a matrix? Would they describe it as that, or like shame, or is that like just
More
a frequency or
consciousness, really, like a frequency. It's not
Yeah,
even really
I'm
an
hearing
emotion.
yes and no.
Yeah.
Like it's hard because it can just be an emotion, but what if that emotion's attached to another type of matrix?
right? Because like something like
So then you have
shame is
matrix.
like used to be like to weaponize, right? Like we
Yeah.
weaponize shame, we weaponize guilt, we weaponize anger, we, you know, use love to allow us to do stuff. We use joy as an incentive. We use happiness as like this goal that we may or may not be experiencing. So I don't want to confuse it. I don't want to get us off, but that's just what's kind of what I'm
Yeah.
thinking
Yeah.
about when we're starting to work with this sort of stuff
Yeah.
to make it, to just kind of like pop some bubbles and some beliefs. Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
always, you know, I think if all, you know, it's kind of that aspect, if all we wanted was the light,
Yeah.
you know, then we can't see the dark, but the dark gives us the light. So it's back to, if there is this, you know, feeling of a heavy density, or instead of fearing the entity, it's like, can we just observe it as a story?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, from those people listening go, oh, like my trauma or this background or this, you know, energy now that I'm attracting is just part of a story. And I'm thankful that I have light in my life to sometimes see this dark. And that I can come out of that dark and go into my light. And, you know, it's like just playing with both
Yeah.
to recognize that it just gives you access to your story and your healing.
Yeah, and I think that, like, in the aspect of if that dense energy is highlighting a place in your body that just needs, like, if it wasn't there, then maybe you were never going to notice it.
Yeah, exactly.
And so then therefore that bad energy, like with quotations, if anybody's listening,
Yes.
that's because I mean it's not bad.
Yeah.
Therefore, it becomes so serving
Yeah.
and such a blessing. You're like, oh my God, thank you so much to this density that has highlighted I can feel emotion on that. Holy moly. Highlighted something in my own system that I need to really look at. And then the ripple effect of that healing in your system after you see where these energies may be residing in your system, that ripple effect goes, for me, I know it goes through my bloodline. It goes through like so many layers of the other matrix I'm in, like my family matrix or my community matrix or all these different things where those can then be held in more health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Everyday speak for the simple folks is basically when you can step into your own healing, it's information, right? That allows you to step into your own life, your own existence, your own reality. So taking information like I'm feeling really low, I have low energy, I don't feel like I can engage in a lot of stuff. That's information that maybe we need to be looking at something and maybe we need to make some changes. When you step into that, everyone around you benefits, right? That matrix that you're talking about, right?
Yes.
So I think if anyone's been able to engage in that sort of work, what's the saying? It's like, the change starts with you. Like it's not asking the people around you to change. It's like you change and then they change because you've changed.
Yeah.
That kind of reflection is so true when you can do that kind of stuff and that kind of work. And that's when you really get some, amazing results and amazing like miracles, really, is how we could sometimes call it, right? With that kind of healing and engaging in these parts of ourselves.
Yeah.
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 Just so cool.
Just so cool.
Matrixes. Okay. I don't use that word regularly, so it's kind of fun.
Right?
To learn that. Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's just really part of like even the movie is kind of like plugged into this matrix, but it's the same kind of idea because we're plugged into an idea of this family, plugged into an idea of this podcast group. We're plugged, this is just basically then you create a programming. And programming, I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's just programming. Yeah. Every computer needs a program. And that's what we're subscribing into by saying, okay, yeah, sure, I'll be part of that matrix and that part of that matrix. And I'm going to be subscribing to the codes that are available to that.
Does that happen at like spirit baby level, D? I'm wondering, like, when do we decide which like matrices we're going to plug into and things like that?
Family, right?
Spirit babies,
or location.
Yeah.
Yeah, so spirit babies, for those that don't know that's the souls of our unborn children, or that potential for unborn children, if we decide to have children, that are waiting in the reincarnation field, if you will. And so they attach into individuals, families, even children. And when it's their turn and there's an opening, then they come forward into this lifetime or whichever dimension. But anyway, so that's spirit baby background. But spirit babies, when I'm in the element of their realm, they talk to me more like contracts. So it's more of the contract perhaps, or the purpose maybe with that individual person or person. So maybe father and mother, maybe it's a donor, maybe it's an adoption thing. It could also be that there was some aspect of karma, which just means that they had an experience with a particular soul or soul group, and they want to maybe neutralize that karma, or they want to build on it. So you could say that's like a webbing that's beginning or starting, right? So then from my perspective, if I am switching my mind from mediumship and going into that realm to looking at it from the individual or the, parents' realm, it's like in their, like I kind of say, like their family tree, they have to start to make room in their matrix. Right? So sometimes people have delayed conceptions and things, maybe because something in their matrix isn't opening for that child to come in.
No space.
There's no space there. And so it's literally like I see it like that, the family tree. Like there's mom and mom, or mom and dad, or dad and dad, like whatever the family dynamic is, there's the individuals that want to call forth the child or children, and what positions are open on the tree. So I will look at it from a matrix perspective, but more from the human side of things. When I'm looking at it, and and I just heard them say to me right now, they're like, thank you, because it is sometimes getting their attention that they don't see it. But from their perspective, they've never talked to me in the matrix construct. So I'm wondering if it's more of like this way that we can place it human wise, or if it's something that gets set up here. that's just interesting now that I'm observing that. But from there, they use the wording, and what they show me is contracts. So they show me literally, like, it's like, if we were to think of it like left brain wise, like documents. Like, is this checkbox, if you decided that, or maybe another baby all of a sudden came into the mix and changed up the conception lineup with where babies were coming in, there's a contract change for that. And so when I'm working in that, or the parents are asking, like, is there an available baby rather than this one that doesn't want to come in right now, I have to work with that baby that's like, you know, was supposed to come in first, that's kind of taking a step back to go, hey, can you open your contract? So it's weird how with them, it's all wording of contracts. It's not so much matrix, but it could look exactly like a matrix too.
I'm seeing that. It's like it's either the vocabulary is one or the other.
It's totally different. I don't know why it's different. It's just the way that they've talked to me about it. Maybe it's more relatable when we say contracts. And even with my own experience of spirit babies, I remember when I was connecting with my firstborn prior to her, me conceiving her, she's like, Mom, meet my brother. And, you know, and I was like, oh, say what? Another baby? And it was like, we had to, all of a sudden I was like signing on another contract, perhaps in my world, to maybe welcome or call in a second baby, maybe, where I wasn't sure. Before I was like, yeah, my contract's reading one for sure. I don't know. And my husband was like, I don't know. We hadn't opened that up. And she was essentially asking, like, can we open it up? And I viewed it at that point literally like assigning documents.
Right. Totally. Which could also just be like a family tree. And all of a sudden you're like, there is like, you know, you and
Potential.
Keith, and then there is a, you know, your firstborn. Then you're like, oh, am I going to actually open up in the matrix another spot energetically for them to kind of come and sit? So that's, yeah.
Yep. And the draw for spirit baby matrices would be that, like I always say that, a family or a person has a particular light. So think of us all walking around a little bit like the Sims characters, you know, with like, they all have like the little thing above their head that like tells them all about their life, or that's like a light bulb, and you have a certain vibration. And so if you say you don't have a past life, or you don't come from a same karmic pod or origin pod or something like that, and I know those are bigger terms that we don't have to totally go into, but they will then just look to see what your light is like. And so they'll look at that light bulb and go, ooh, mine's the same. Or mine can resonate. That's a match for me. So then sometimes spirit babies just find you because there's a vibration that pulls it in, and not because you have all of this history and connection. So it's interesting. And so to me, that's also like contracted or free will. And people to say, I'm going to start a matrix.
Yeah.
A brand new matrix with somebody and build it.
Fascinating. So fascinating.
So yeah. I also, what I love about matrix work too, is like how when you pop into one that isn't functioning to that client or person, or even myself's like best ability, how neat it is just to play around with those lines, right? So if we think of like the web, and like, oh, that line is connected to this part of my body, it's not serving me here, so I can't communicate properly with this person that way, and like moving them and like shifting that energy. And it's like very, again, very energetic, because people go, well, now what am I supposed to say to this person or do, or what should I do in my role? I'm like, let the energy lead you. Like, you're changing a field. And how that can play out, whether, you know, you're doing it literally in your mind with the client, or playing it out in like a constellation or something.
Yeah. So constellations are all just matrix work, which I do a lot of that. Yeah.
Does time have a matrix?
Does time have a matrix?
Yes. I heard yes. I just saw it. More so because I saw it. Do you see it? What's your...
I just hear time's a dimension.
But dimension has outreaching tentacles and cords that completely pull and attach to us to jump us, right? So of course it has a matrix.
Right. So if we're actually, by being here in this realm, on this planet, we're deciding to be a part of the matrix of time.
Yeah. You know what time just said? The matrix of time just said to me is that it's more about whether the person, they say, we invite you all the time. time.
Is that a pun?
Pun intended, but I didn't actually know when I said that. I was like, what pun? And I like remembered what I said and was like, oh yeah. Yeah, the time just said like there is way more in our matrix. You just have to accept the invitation.
So how does time work with in terms of like what you're just speaking to, right? So if we're going to change our matrix or we're going to do some kinds of work to move it around or shift some things. And I think we hear all the time, the energetic work happens and it can take a while to show up in the physical body or the physical life. So what's the relationship between time, energetic work, and the physical body?
Yeah.
In terms of time as a matrix.
It's funny because I think I've been tuning into time a lot, as in like, can in the matrix of time, can in this reality also what is time, like in the relative standpoint. So if I'm really working with time, then I can also work with like speeding time up a little bit, using my energy in the matrix in a different way. If I want healing to land in the physical body a little bit quicker, or I'm observing that potential. Or I want to slow it down because, man, I just really want to see that butterfly like flap its wings really slow. So I think there is an ability to change your own fabric within the fabric of time and perceive it how you wish. And I think there is times where in healing work that I've seen things come through the energetics, and by the time it lands in the person's physical reality, it's like weeks or months, and sometimes instant, like right in the moment. They're a different person.
Interesting.
Yeah. So there's no rule, I don't think, for me anyways on that.
No, and I think the biggest thing is just like human resistance, right? So time could be knocking on your door saying, let's heal this overnight. Let's heal this. Let's start the healing process. And it'll keep knocking until our resistance is down. So I think it's time is willing to give you anything. It's about what the invitation is, like what we want to invite and what our resistance meets then with it, right, is what I'm hearing. I think that's why you sometimes see miracles. And you're like, how come they get a miracle and I don't? Like, am I less than? And no, I think it just depends on maybe their resistance boundary was way less, or their capability of receiving that healing and that timing was what was supposed to happen in total fruition for them, and they were ready for it. And I'm also hearing perhaps that time, they say sometimes that we do need a lengthier time or a time because there's so many more multiple lessons tied to it that we need to see as well. So how can we just say, let's jump to this, or let's just be in the healing now, if we can't unfold and see the journey? Like as humans, like sometimes we need to have that full experience. So that time will, even though we're like, I have no resistance, I want it, time might also have a different, and I almost saying time is like the healing energy, but time might have maybe a different lesson for you as you heal.
Or like a wisdom is kind of what is coming through, a wisdom and awareness of the different aspects that are impacting your life.
Yeah.
Because it's that idea that, like, I think we hear a lot about like timeline jumping or this or that. And then I always like to ask, where's the ego in that, and where are we wishing for something that we don't understand, or that we don't know, or we aren't ready yet. And being not ready is also really beautiful, right? Like that means there's a lot of wisdom there that you're meant to look at or be with or sit with or work with first.
And this, in my observation, just in my practice, this is not going to be for everybody's practice, perhaps, maybe just for me, what I've seen is that if I'm working with a matrix issue with someone versus a non-matrix issue, like something within their own consciousness or that kind of thing, and just what I've observed, if I just kind of like put it in a graph, I've noticed that matrix work for me, I see that it shifts people faster. And then like it's almost more in that instant kind of miracle kind of a feeling. Like, whoa, that's just like that. Because there's something about like if something is plugged into you that's not really your own consciousness, or maybe your own story, that's somebody else's story plugged into you, if it's a living person or not living person, then as soon as that's kind of, we take those hooks and we release those hooks out, it's like we've unplugged you from someone else's consciousness. And that is just literally an unplugging. And then it's no longer a part of your matrix, your actual healthy system. And then what happens, and then there is, and so I want to say that when we do matrix work and I unplug these things, or a trained practitioner unplugs these things, there's a lot that happens. There's prep work in the body before we unplug and unhook. And there's a lot of systems that we lead for your energy to heal and repair, because that plug would create some kind of tears in the energy. And so we make sure there's protocols before and after. So then, but I see that after we do the healing aspect or the repair aspect, that it's in my perspective, or what I've seen, really like a lot faster than if I, because it's unplugged, we're repairing Wei Qi, and then they're like, sweet, like I'm actually just literally out of that system. I'm like good to go. And I've seen like literally instantaneous, mind boggling. I think the most like energy, if I can say, miracle happens for me in matrix work. And then I think when I've worked with people on like their own conditioning, their belief systems, like how they were raised, like, that type of programming, just that the winding of their own consciousness, like their own mind, that usually takes the layers and the work, and that feels totally appropriate. Mm-hmm. So that's my really experience. Cool. Yeah.
I love that.
If you guys are like facilitating a session or breathwork or whatever, do you see matrices like how do you, or how does it feel for you? Like how do you know all of a sudden you're working in a matrix?
In a session? Mm-hmm. I mean,
I'm just curious. Like I know, and I'm just like for audience members, I'd be like, what does that look like? Does it look like, does it always appear to you the same way? Like let's even talk like from an entity perspective of different vibrations. What does that look like? Do you see it? Do you feel it? Does it look like a bubble that comes into a field? Like how does it approach for you guys?
I mean, for me, I see it as like, I'll feel the density or the frequency in the body. So I almost see it like, I'll see it in my mind's eye. I also just use the BodyTalk protocol and lead in the chart, right? But I'll see it as a certain color in the body and taking a space somewhere along in their body. So, it's anchored here, that like the head of this energy is focused around this part of your body. And then I'll see where the hooks and cords and tentacles or whatever are grabbing into their system. Mm-hmm. And then I'll just kind of hold my hand onto it, try to tune into then, like, what is this energy? Like, what's the consciousness in this matrix, and get really clear on the story as much as I can. And then once the story is really like observed and the emotion of the story is observed, then I can start to unhook one at a time, and then kind of grab the whole consciousness of the energy and draw it out of the bodies to help to hold and dissolve. Mm-hmm. And then after it's fully dissolved and come into more neutral energy chi, then you kind of come back into the body and do repairs. Mm-hmm. But I see it as like a blobbed energy of color.
Yeah. Okay.
Or dark. Sometimes just black.
Okay. And then what about like if you're reading more of like an attack? Well, I want to ask Meredith the same ones, but what if like it's more an external energy, so not projected by the person's own matrix energy or consciousness, but like say like an entity? How does that?
It's usually in the body too, an entity.
So it appear the same. So you won't necessarily see like an entity around the person.
I can see them in the aura for sure too,
yeah.
But I'll see where it hooks into into their body first. Then I might see like if it's in their aura, I'll see like a dense, almost like the shape of the actual entity in their aura.
Yeah.
So it might show me like, this was a person.
Okay.
That maybe had passed away.
Yeah. Or
this is something a little bit less human looking.
Yeah.
And then I'll see kind of that shape, and then kind of clear that. But also like a lot of out of body entities are more just like spirits. Mm-hmm. So then I kind of see it a little differently too.
Yeah.
So then I do spirit cleaning, land clearing, house clearing, but that's a little different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. What about you, Mare?
I'm just trying to like feel into, because I don't use the word matrix.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to feel into like what that is for me, like,
yeah.
or what I call them, like how do I name that? Because I can feel that, and I've experienced the matrix with you. And so I'm just trying to bring it into my own vocabulary on how I'm doing that. And, it really kind of depends on the person I'm working with in a lot. I adjust myself a lot to what is in front of me. And so I threw a lot through feeling. And then I have claircognizance that's quite strong. So I just like know, like if I'm looking and there's permission, I've engaged, But whether I say something or not is, that discernment is something that I use quite a bit with clients. Like I don't always tell people what I see because it's not necessarily helpful at times, because it can be quite dark. I see a lot of darkness and that is really scary to people. And I'd rather them not be scared if I don't think that there's immediate like problem. Sometimes I'll see like faces over their faces, like Pam was describing, where I'm like, wow, that's usually lineage stuff. I'll see that the most, or, they come to me and I see them as visuals of, different creatures and things like that. So I'll see lots of different creatures that are around, or I'll just get a sense of their body so I can kind of do a quick body scan and I can see, when I say see, I just mean it like in my brain and I feel it in my body sometimes, but that's something, and I'll run it through my heart and that something's just not quite right, or that there's different parts in different places is what I'll see. And then I just ask some questions of like, what is this? Like, is this something we're supposed to work on today or not? And a lot of times, depending on how deep it is, it's a no, right? And it's like a slow process. So a lot of the stuff I work is more trauma-based, is more slow stuff. So it can take the energy can shift immediately, but it takes a long time to integrate or to come around to that. But I was introduced to the term egregore in my training, which is like a belief structure, right?
Say that again?
Egregore.
I don't know if I've ever heard that.
And so like an egregore is like a living energy because we believe in it, right? And so something, it can be political, it can be religious, it can be like kind of a cultural thing almost. And so it's like when the conscious, and it kind of speaks to like the power of consciousness, like of when we believe something, it is true.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
And so whether we think that something may mean not aligned with our beliefs at all, doesn't mean that it doesn't have power when enough people believe into it.
Oh yeah.
Right. And so those, I kind of like, when you're speaking, I'm like, is that what matrix is to me? Because I see egregores all the time in that sort of sense, or I see these living belief structures or these living energies because there is a participation. And so when you were saying like plugged in, do we choose to plug in? That to me is my languaging maybe around that. Because I think that we like to, like I might say like capitalism is a big egregore, and whether I believe that's right or wrong or blah, blah, blah is aside, I still participate in it because I live in a society and I choose to work within it. Right. Or,
I think ceremony is that.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
I mean, even like COVID was a matrix.
Yep.
Right? And it was all of us, every single person on the planet in that matrix was forced to deal with that matrix. However we decided or whether it was invaded, like whatever we chose to do with it or had to unplug from or dive deeper into, whatever. It was probably a matrix that was so wide that you couldn't not have a thought about it. Do you know what I mean?
That's like being human, isn't it? Right?
Yeah.
Like, and like living in the world in our time, bringing back time in, like bringing it this time and space in the storyline, like the issues, the things that we deal with, the consciousness that we encounter, are all part of this, isn't it? That kind of matrix. Yeah. That's really interesting. I like that.
I think if you really look at it, because if you think about even what you're speaking about, everything is that then, literally. There's not a single thing that doesn't qualify as being a part of some sort of matrix.
Yeah.
Or egregore?
Egregore.
I keep thinking agriculture.
Yeah.
No, egregore.
Like agriculture?
No.
What?
Right.
What are you talking about?
Well, even thinking about like, you know, like what we do for even protection, you know, spells, right? People go, oh, put on the evil eye, so evil eye doesn't get you. But perhaps, you know, but that maybe that, but if you really plug into that, it probably works for you because you know what I mean?
And so BodyTalk, I remember when we were learning matrices and that that module, like when it came to them talking about entities, it was very like they taught it is like, this is going to mean so many different things for depending on your background, depending on what you believe and what you like perceive it to be. That's and the more that you're maybe comfortable or not comfortable, you'll attract it and you won't. But remember they said, oh, it's not like because I think we think of an entity for maybe quite a few people as demons or demonic.
And they can be.
Exactly.
I miss
There's a part of
sometimes.
that in all of
Yeah.
this, but they were very clear in that that's not necessarily what they were saying. But that's a
Yeah.
belief system of how somebody might approach what they're seeing too,
I remember this
based on their religious background as well.
Well, they're saying that in our
Spirituality,
training that we probably would typically, this is like I have no idea if this is true or not, but this is like I remember somebody saying that you might see more entity attachments in like the Eastern countries because they have just more of a fear and belief of it than you might hear than maybe in like other places. I don't really know.
That's what they said. Also, like Catholics have a real high propensity for being
Right.
spiritual channelers and folks and stuff, because from a young age we were like introduced to the idea of like otherworldly energies like influencing behaviors,
Right.
and like we spoke even prayer, right? Like prayer to saints, prayer to God, spirit, all that opens you up to this idea that these other energies exist and there's something that affect your life and they communicate with and something that you work with, right? And will help steer the outcomes of your life, which is interesting, right?
Yeah.
And then you go back to like if that's true and you're like you believe in whatever because you live in a certain part of the world or you're part of a certain culture or religion, again, like going back to if it does come into your system, again, why? Like where is the like it's because there's again
There's
highlighting something beautiful for you to like work on, like it's highlighting the chink in the armor. So I just come back to like sweet.
Makes me just think of a part of a human experience, you know, because we think about when you do study religions, like so many of the religions, there's the same, you know, if you like really broke down, like if you took away the small details, like a lot of the beliefs are the same, or they're the different names for the same things, right? Or same frequencies, same energies. I'm not saying all religions are the same, but a lot of when we're talking about this, I'm just thinking of all the different names that we use, depending on the cultures, depending on the worlds, depending where we are. But is that frequency the same thing, right? Like, what are we calling the sun, for example? If we all experience the sun, yet we have different names, we have different stories we attach to it, we have different relationships to it. Again, probably depending on where we live in the world. But like, are those different like matrices? Are those different energies? Like, how does that work in? Is that just part of like being a human experience to, you know what I mean? Experience what is it like to live under a sun.
Yeah, plug into that belief of this one or that belief or this belief. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like very interesting.
Very interesting. I do want to say that personal story.
Do tell.
You guys were both there for this. So it just happened last week. Can I share that?
Like
you were
at the
there
breath
too?
work?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So Meredith leads trauma-based somatic breathwork. Is that how you say it?
I mean, yeah.
Sure.
What matrix are you under, Mary?
Yeah,
I'm just
right.
kidding.
Like, yeah, which one is this? And so, anyways, just so kindly, Meredith offered Dina to come for a session of breathwork. We did it last Friday, like a week ago, or just over, and we had very different experiences.
That's why I was like, yeah, I'm curious to see how yours went because we're both in our own little la lands. Mine,
Literally.
yeah, keep going.
You're in the matrix of Nantaka, and I'm sitting here in the matrix of sexual trauma.
Yeah.
And in my journey through breath, holy crap, did I release some dark, really low vibrational entities out of my system that were deeply layered into places of wounding in my system that has, lifelong trauma places. So that was so incredibly beautiful for me to release. And in that place where the amount of density that came out of my system through this work was like, because I embrace it, I think that it was like, I wasn't scared. You know what I mean? Like it was a lot of, you can probably share your experience of observing, but for me, that was like, I haven't cried that hard and I don't even remember when. Like it was like, I got to scream, I got to cry, I got to really express myself in like frustration and anger and pain and grief and all sorts of really big things. And the ability to be able to do that and to be held in it, to bring light into those darker places in my body. Ooh, man, I feel like a totally different person this week than I was last week. So thank you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah.
I got you. Special.
I heard it, folks. I got the front row seat. And it was so beautiful to hear because I had my eyes closed and I was journeying. But I was like, oh, she's processing something good. And I remember just like even like in my mind, I was like, yeah, you just keep doing you. And like, I remember even just like I remember, Meredith, you'd go between us and you'd come over and like check on me a little bit. But I was like, I don't know if you ever heard this or felt this, but I kept saying like, no, it's okay. Go be with Pam. Like, go with Pam. Like, I'm in a blissful journey of soaking in some water here. Like, I was just swimming. I was doing my own thing. And so complete opposite. And neither were right or wrong, but I was in complete bliss. I would say in deep reconnection of some origin work for me, some discovery, and it was really, really light. So for me, really, really light. And then here you're processing really, really dark. Neither were wrong, and both continue to offer healing, right? So it's like the juxtaposition of the yin yang there.
And it was interesting because even though I was processing like on the dark side of the yin yang in this room, it was like really truly like, because when you're in that deep acceptance of it, knowing that it's with so much grace, I like was bawling my face off, but in the background of bliss the entire time. Like there'd be pockets where my body would rest and I would just feel like the matrix of the divine feminine coming in and holding me and nurturing me as I was going through. I'm like, oh, thank you. I was almost I just felt really interesting. I would just feel like this whole feminine energy hold me in a container, like going, you got this, where you're nurturing, you're birthing out something really big out of your body. This is, we've got you. And then I would fall back into the next contraction basically. And so there was pockets of like, oh wow, I'm so held. I'm so loved. I am loved and I love myself and I love my body and I love my inner child. And that was able to, anchor so much, and that kind of released, of course, out of my pelvis, as you would assume, and my physical body already has shifted so much, and like my sacrum isn't as locked up as it usually is, and I'm noticing it just kind of popping open. I went to some yin yoga yesterday, so I was just noticing flexibility changes, and even to my lumbar spine, like noticing more release. So as in talking about how quickly can this change your physical body, well, for me, fast. Yeah, totally fast.
Yeah,
That's amazing. Thanks.
Yeah, that's great. And I think you've also done a lot of foundational layers prior to that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so it's like your healing is just getting even more integrative. And maybe in a way, the physical healing can be faster then, right? Because it's like these deeper, like perhaps last bit of matrices or tentacles or whatever is just giving you that much more comfort in your physical body.
Yeah.
More healing, right?
And I'm also like, I'm like in a deep mindful integration where I'm like, I'm thinking about it. I'm bringing love to that area. I'm choosing integration work afterwards on like, versus just going, oh great, that was a great session, and walk away and go back to like life. And
you had follow up.
I like followed up with my own self as like a listen. I slept for the entire day the next day. Yeah. Pretty much. And so it was just listening to my body afterwards, which then helped it go faster versus going, oh, great, thank you. And then usually it's the not paying attention to integration work that will make it go a lot slower to get into the body because we're not being that sponge. Right. So integration work, man, like it's the key. The key.
Yep. And I was just gonna to say that sometimes with as you were talking, I love this because it's like you had done so much foundational work and I would say matrix removals and whatever you want to call it in the past, and we sometimes don't know that there's more. Because we could live in a very comfortable range after. So say if you've done a lot of work 10 years ago, you're like, I'm great. I'm doing really, really well. And then all of a sudden we enter into a deeper layer.
There's always more.
There's always more.
Ends.
And so, but sometimes we don't see
alert.
it, right? Like you were like, how can there be more? And you're like, whoa, where did that come from? Because it finally reveals itself. So we think we've arrived and the ego will tell you we've arrived and then we just haven't.
Yep. Because
but you have. It's just that you've opened up another layer.
It's continual.
Right?
So to know that, just to continue to hold space to see even more.
I think what does change too is the trust in the process. Every time you go, it's I always view it as a muscle, or every time you enter into conscious relationship with these sort of selves and these sort of changings, you can build a bit more trust with it, right? It's not, if you don't do a results-based expectation, meaning I'm going to do this and you're going to show me the miracle, right? No, it's no, the miracle is you. So you're just going to keep engaging with this time and time and time again. And that's something that Pam has done for a very long time. So she was prepared and already knew it was kind of coming to be able to work at that level. I think if you were to just come in unknowingly and start to try to do that, it could be extremely traumatic, right?
Yeah.
And then especially not knowing what integration looks like for Pam will look different for Dee, will look different for me. And so starting to understand really how you work as a vessel, how you are supported, how you're nourished is part of that conversation. So that when you are like, fucking hell, another layer, you're like, oh, okay, it's more trust with that actual process. Like, okay, I too will be held in this. I too, on the other side of this, it showed me that it's hard, but that it's worth it. Because then I have more in my heart. I feel more present in my life, or whatever you decide is of value for your life, right?
Because it's like, I think healing is not like a circle that stays on the same plane. It's an upward spiral.
Absolutely.
So then, yes, you're going to, as you circle and circle, you're going to hit that kind of notch again, but it's an upward spiral so that you are in a capacity for greater heart space, for more compassion, for more like being able to hold love in your body, unconditional love in your body, to hold, to deeper sense your senses. So you become, in my experience, I've become a more grounded, present human. Even as many times as I go up the circle and hit that same trauma notch or bruise. And I'm like, okay, that's okay. I'm hitting it again, but I'm hitting it in a totally different perspective and a totally different capability. And my system is a completely new system since I hit it last time. So because of that, I'm going to see more and open my heart up even more as I spiral up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is ascension, really, still.
Yep.
Yeah.
Ascension through descension.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always both ways.
Deconstruct to construct.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's always
Amazing.
both ways.
Amazing.
Love that.
Oh, ladies.
Oh, thanks for indulging me.
Well, thank you for being open. Thanks, teacher.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks.
Teacher Pam.
Thanks.
And thanks our advocate over there for balancing the judgment.
It's always just me being the Debbie Downer. Hey.
It literally was your role in the breathwork. You were like standing between literally like play La La Land and like dream trauma land, and it was perfect.
Though.
It
Yeah,
was
that's
what
totally,
I love that stuff. That's how I work. That's what I do. I see, and like I knew you were okay, but I still doesn't mean I'm not gonna like give you some messages. And I know we were working with some certain energies, but you didn't.
Your tips were like, I feel like with you and I, it's like all you have to do is give me a one-liner, and then I spiral for weeks, like in a good way. Like I'm like, there it is. Like it's like you just say one thing or like breathe this way or whatever it is, and I'm like, there it is. Like I don't, and it's not with you and I, it's not a long story. It's nothing. It's just like, zip, there it is.
Yeah, I prefer that way. That's my preferred method of communication.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then other times, like it's also really beautiful to be able to witness and hold someone that's like, okay, I'm ready, and it's like, oh yeah, all signs are yes. And I'm always doing my work in the background and energetically, as well as like in human side, to make sure that this container is safe, that it's supported, that is a yes from Pam, and that we are doing the appropriate amount and like holding and taking breaks and things like that. Because I think that there can be sensationalization around the experience, and that can cause like a lack of integration and a lot of problem after. If you're like, oh, I had a big cry, that was it, I'm done now, check. You're like, that was just the start or the finish.
I literally was like, can we do
it?
another one so I can integrate this one?
Yeah. No, I was like, it's a good idea. And as like a responsible person, I would say, if you've had a big experience, like I want you to come and see me again, or at least have a chat, or like, because you're probably gonna need more than one or two. And then also your next breathwork will be completely different, or your next engagement, because like the energy has shifted and that energy or priority for that day is going to be different.
And it's not that when you go and see a practitioner, it's not just always about like the big breakthrough work. A lot of our work is integrative work.
Yes.
So don't be afraid to see a practitioner in the times of integration. They're your assets and your allies in integration. Sometimes integration without that observer can be a little more difficult. So if you are in integration or in a piece between, like if you have done something really, really big and you're like, a bit frozen in that, go back to your practitioner.
Yeah.
Like for real.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Amazing. Well, thanks
Thank
for
you.
everybody for listening. This has been another great conversation of spirituality meets humanity.
Yeah.
Hey, ladies.
3 Fates, baby.
3 Fates podcast. Looking forward to the next one.
Yeah. Have a beautiful day.
Bye.